Greetings fellow gorehounds and welcome back to another Blood Splattered vlog. So I just got done watching the latest Netflix original horror movie, The Ritual, which was directed by David Bruckner, who some of you may know as the writer-director of The Signal. And on top of that, he also did two of my favorite segments from both Southbound and VHS, with his Southbound contribution being The Accident, which is without a doubt my favorite segment in that entire movie, and his VHS contribution was Amateur Night, the only segment from the entirety of the VHS series that has its own movie. Now granted, the movie based on his segment, Siren, was not directed by him, as he was busy directing this movie. So there you go, this movie, Netflix's new original movie, is the reason why David Bruckner did not direct Siren. And once I realized that information, that meant that this movie had something to prove. Because now The Ritual had to be good enough to justify David Bruckner working on it as opposed to Siren. And I got some really good news for you because The Ritual is fucking fantastic. It is not only the best horror movie I've seen so far this year, which granted is not saying much because it's only the first 2 months of the year, but even still, it's gonna take a lot to top this movie in the year to come. That being said, if you're the kind of person who has a weak constitution when it comes to animal death, then you should probably avoid this movie. Because while I do not recall an actual animal dying visibly on screen, there is remnants of dead animal bodies within this movie, like scattered throughout. So proceed with caution if that is a concern for you. Anyway, before I move on to saying anything else about this movie, I should say that the best way to watch this movie is to watch it knowing nothing else about it. All you need to know is that it's David Bruckner's new movie. He directed Amateur Night, he directed The Signal, you know he does good stuff. So I highly recommend you stop right now, boot up Netflix, watch the movie, and then continue watching my review. Because even telling you the premise of this movie, I feel like takes away some of the experience of watching it for the first time. Because that's the way I watched this movie, and ultimately that made for a much more satisfying experience. Especially given the way this movie begins, which sets you up for a completely different movie than you actually get. And I mean that in the best way possible. I love every single plot turn of this movie. So anyway, now that I've said that, let me tell you what The Ritual is actually about. This movie is very similar to Amateur Night in that it's about a group of guy friends. Except unlike Amateur Night, everyone within this group of guy friends are actually pretty likable. At least at the beginning. There are things that happen over the course of the movie that make you like some characters over other characters, but at the beginning, you're pretty much on board with everyone. And ultimately, what ends up happening in the movie is this group of guy friends goes out into the forest in order to do some hiking, and things end up going south from there, but I'm not going to tell you why until we get to the spoilers. Though, given that the movie is called The Ritual, you probably have a whole lot of ideas in your head about what's going to happen. And while some of those ideas might be right, a lot of those ideas are not. So place any and all expectations firmly at the door when you go in to see this movie. Let the movie wash all over you as it happens, and let yourself experience the movie in the moment. And trust me, when you're done watching the movie, it will give you a lot to chew on as the days go by. It is really well acted, it is really well written, it is really well shot, and it is constructed in a way that will keep you at the edge of your seat the entire time wondering what's going to happen next. Which is one of the best feelings to have while watching a super suspenseful and super grueling horror movie. Which is something else I should say. This movie is incredibly intense, incredibly suspenseful, and God is it good. Anyway, I highly recommend The Ritual. It's a Netflix original movie, so you can stop this review and go watch it on Netflix right now. And because it's a Netflix original movie, that means there's probably not going to be an Amazon affiliate link to the movie in my description, but I will include Amazon affiliate links to VHS, Southbound, and The Signal so you can watch other David Bruckner movies. And if you choose to buy or rent any of those movies through that Amazon affiliate link in my description, I will get a kickback from it. And with all that said, my fellow gorehounds, let us move on to the spoilers. Alright, first off, let me talk about the opening of this movie, because this opening sets you up for a completely different movie, and oh my god is it intense. Because in the opening scene of this movie, we're introduced to our group of friends having dinner one night on the town, and while they're walking through the streets of, I think, Amsterdam, but probably not, because I think this is set in Sweden, not Denmark, two of the friends enter a convenience store in order to buy alcohol when they discover that the convenience store is being robbed. And unfortunately, one of the friends, in fact our protagonist of the movie, is so terrified of these robbers that he hides behind a shelf. But before his other friend can properly react to what's happening in front of him, he is spotted. And once his friend is spotted, the main character takes the bottle of alcohol he has and looks like he's gonna go hit one of those guys over the head, but he chickens out at the last minute because he's too terrified he might get killed. But unfortunately, what this leads to is his friend getting beaten to death by these robbers. And it's in this really intense scene in which he gives him his watch, he gives him his wallet, but then they ask for his wedding ring. And that's the one thing his friend refuses to give up, and this costs him his life. And it's so intense. I was at the edge of my seat, like biting my nails, going, oh man, dude, just give him the ring. Holy shit. These guys are not fucking around. Do not mess with them. And on the other side of this situation, I'm also sitting there going like, oh my god, I don't know if I could actually like get up and hit them because you might get shot. So you totally understand what the main character is going through, but you're also sitting there going like, yeah, but if you don't do this, your friend might die. But unfortunately, he makes his choice, he doesn't intervene, and his friend ends up dead. We flash forward to the present, and our friends are now in the woods of Sweden, and they're paying tribute to their dead friend through a burial on this hill. They even do this whole ceremony where they all drink from this flask and then pour some out for their homie. And unfortunately, one of the things that becomes very obvious as this movie goes on is that the group of friends kind of blames the main character a little bit. It's obvious that not all of them think it's right to blame him, but part of them blames him anyway. So you have one friend that's kind of directly blaming him, but then you have the other friends that are trying to keep it inside because they know it's not right. And I kind of liked the complexity of the struggles they're all going through, because I think we've all been in situations where we know we shouldn't blame someone, but we blame them anyway, even though we know it's wrong. Because our minds need to attach blame to someone, we just stick it onto the first person we can. Anyway, the group of friends are basically following this hiking trail up this mountain and up this hill. And after performing this ceremony for their dead friend, they start to head back, but here's where things go wrong. Because one of the friends twists his ankle, and his friends kind of assume that he sprained it, but as the movie goes on, it becomes very clear that he broke that thing. In fact, when he initially sprained it, you can hear a snap. So I'm pretty sure the indication is the friends were wrong, that thing is broken. Though I did hear at least one interpretation that it wasn't actually broken to begin with, but becomes broken as the movie goes on, because of the spooky things that ends up happening that I will explain in a minute. So, because their friend sprained their leg, and because it has been raining off and on since they got there, the group of friends decide they want to get back to the cabin resort thing fast. So instead of following the hiking trail, let's go straight through the forest. Since from where they're standing, there is a straight shot there, and it could save them a couple days. But unfortunately, hours after entering the forest, they end up coming across this cabin. And once inside this cabin, it becomes clear that these guys are probably not going to make it out of this forest. Because inside this cabin is some Blair Witch style shit. Spooky ritual symbols on the trees outside and inside the cabin walls. And on the second floor of the cabin, there is this giant wicker monster thing. It looks kind of like a person, but not like a person, and it also has like these antlers for arms. And it looks like something straight out of the Wicker Man. And so our main characters are visibly spooked by this, but then it starts raining, so they decide to stay in until the rain stops. They all end up falling asleep for the night, and here's where things start to go even worse. The main character has a nightmare about going back into that convenience store where his friend was killed, but at the end of the nightmare, some sort of hand grabs his chest and leaves this awful mark on it, and then the walls of the convenience store disappear. Well, disappear is not right. They kind of fly into the woods, because as it turns out, he is not in the cabin, he is standing outside. And even after waking up, his chest is still bleeding. Because, as it turns out, he did not sleepwalk, he didn't even have a nightmare, whatever is happening in the woods is causing him to hallucinate. And I do want to emphasize whatever is happening in the woods, because there is something in the forest. That's right, my fellow gorehounds, this movie is a fucking monster movie. And no, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking at this point in the movie, it's gonna be like the Blair Witch, and you're never gonna see the monster. And you would be dead wrong, because you see this monster, oh my god, do you see this monster? And it looks fucking glorious. And I'm not gonna tell you what the monster is, but I will tell you it impales people on trees. It's fucking great. I love this monster. This is one of my favorite movie monsters in a long time. It's probably up there with the Babadook and the It Follows monster, definitely. But anyway, he goes back inside the cabin, and his friend is freaking out, calling for his wife's name. And this is the friend that sprained his leg, and you get a good look at his leg, and it's clear that that is more than sprained, that's fucking broken. But the question is, was it broken to begin with, or did something break it in the night? That much we will never find out, but it is an interesting question. His other friend wakes up screaming and wet himself in the middle of the night, and his final friend is upstairs and wakes up praying to the Wicker Monster. And he has no idea why he was praying, it's like something made him pray to it in the middle of the night. So anyway, the friends freak out, they all put on their clothes, they all go outside to get the hell out of there, and one of them notices that there's actually a path. Right outside of the cabin, there's an actual path that leads somewhere. But is it really a path, or did something barrel through there that was really big? Because in the main character's dream, he dreamt that the wall just through the forest and made this path. So did it really make the path, or was the path already there? And as for what exactly is actually happening to these friends within the woods, I ain't gonna tell you. I told you there was a monster, and that's all you need to know. As for everything else that's gonna happen in the last half of this movie, you have to find out for yourself. Because it's too fucking good, and I know that there's some of you that decided to watch the spoilers instead of watching the movie when I told you to earlier. So now you're gonna have to pause this review, now you're gonna have to go watch the movie if you want to know what happens. I'm sorry my friends, I know I'm evil incarnate, but this is just what I do. Anyway, my fellow gorehounds, I highly recommend The Ritual. It is one of the best horror movies of the whole year and is a guarantee on my end of the year list. So boot up Netflix and watch it right now. And as per usual, my fellow gorehounds, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so that you're notified of my videos immediately upon their upload. And as always, peace out, my fellow gorehounds, and I'll catch y'all later. Now stop watching and go watch the Blair Wicker Man Project.